The mirror in the after-hours gym. The first time I noticed it, the locker room smelled wrong. Not the usual cocktail of chlorine and eucalyptus oil the gym diffuses to convince people sweat is a choice, but a thin metal scent that reminded me of wet coins and citrus. My towel had that on it when I unfolded it, something that wasn't mine, a ghost of someone who'd used my life to dry his hands. I buried my face in the cotton and breathed until the smell became a story. After hours, a door keyed open, laughter kept small for the sake of the cameras, the turn of a lock that didn't belong to me. We had moved above the fitness club because of the price and the view. Off-season by the river is cheap. The city forgets to charge for its reflections. Lena liked watching the pool glow turquoise at night, a rectangle of fake summer in February. I liked the way she'd lean on the balcony rail and let the cold flush her cheeks, then turn and tuck her face in my neck until her breath altered the weather. The first month we didn't cook. We ate takeout on the floor and made jokes about how adults live. She slept with her hand on my chest, fingers splayed, as if counting my ribs would help her remember what she had. It wasn't a single wrong thing, it was an accumulation. The new sports bra in a brand whose logo she mocked for being too loud. A triangle of glitter caught in the bathroom plug hole like a fish scale. The sound of her phone, 2 quick chimes popping off at midnight with a name I hadn't saved, Coach. She had never called anyone Coach in her life. When I asked, she grinned, distracted. "They're renaming programs," she said. "Everything, Coach now, lifestyle nonsense." I nodded as if nonsense couldn't pick locks. I kept telling myself to ask better questions. Instead, I changed my hours. If she trained evenings, I would become a morning person. I started going down when the gym opened at 6. The pool room steamed like a thought you can't quite form. Some mornings the aftertaste of someone else's cologne lingered over lane 3. Some mornings a towel cart sat misaligned, as if pushed by a hurry. I swam and counted tiles and practiced what I would say if I ever understood what I knew. We met the previous summer at a friend's race. Lena had signed up for a charity triathlon without owning a bike. She borrowed something too big with taped bars and laughed the whole time as if embarrassed at how warm she could be. We drank water like wine under a tent that pretended to be shade. "I don't like running," she told me, wiping salt from her lip. "But I like how hard it is." She said hard like a promise that meant more than exercise. That night we ended up in my kitchen making pasta the way people do when hunger is an alibi for being close. She let me lift her onto the counter. She slid forward until her knees bracketed my hips and said, "I want to watch you blush." The light made a gold stripe across her collarbone. Sometimes memory is cruel because it tells the truth too beautifully. The first real clue came with a bracelet. A silicone band the color of bruised peaches turned up on our windowsill next to the succulent she forgot to water. It had a stamped word, grit. The kind of merchandise the gym sells to convince people suffering is fashionable. Lena didn't wear silicone bands. She wore thin silver and a cheap woven thread she said a friend tied in Thailand. I picked it up and the citrus metal smell bloomed from it, small but exact. I set it back on the sill and watched sunlight turn it into a warning. I have never been good at rage. It feels like performing a language I only know in theory. So I turned to work. I made a folder on my laptop and named it Receipts even though there weren't any yet. I liked the idea of proof that didn't require me to be eloquent. My first entry, the bracelet with a photo and the time stamp. Then, late-night notifications, screen glow under the duvet at 00:41, 00:56, 01:09. Then, the towel with the smell. Then, the laundry, where a small dark hair, cut short and not hers, clung to the inside of a t-shirt like punctuation. Once I followed her without calling it that. The gym closes at 10, but trainers have keys. She said she needed to finish a program design in the quiet. I said I had reports to submit and kissed her forehead like a man who believes he isn't lying. At 10:12, I went down the fire stairs, slow, careful not to make the metal grumble. Through the glass from the pool deck, the weight room looked like a city of steel held at rest. In the mirror of the dance studio, floor to ceiling, endless, the world doubled. There she was in the doubled world with a man whose silhouette had that carved quality people get when they earn their muscles. He stood too close to her to be a program. Her head tipped toward his shoulder and stayed there a heartbeat longer than colleagues do. The mirror's version of her lifted a hand to his chest, a test, then a claim. The studio speakers whispered a playlist of remixes that make bodies feel invited. I backed away because the mirror was making me someone I hated. I didn't storm in. I went to the pool. I sat on the damp bench and pretended to time lapse for swimmers who weren't there. My hands shook in the contained humidity. The clock made a cheap tick. I could see our balcony from the window. One dim plant in a pot. One folding chair. I stayed until the tick of the clock felt like a different kind of metronome. And then I went upstairs and lay on my side of the bed, my back to the lamp, and slept the hollow sleep of people who have decided not to know anything until morning. The next day Lena was gentle as if she had a bruise and didn't know where. She made oatmeal and burned it a little and said we should do a lake trip when it warmed, rent a cabin where the shower is outside and we pretend we like spiders. I said yes to all of it. At work I opened the receipts folder and wrote, "Mirror." I added a note I would be embarrassed to show anyone. A physical description I tried not to imagine. Veins like pale lines on a forearm. A tattoo shaped like a compass at the inside of the elbow. I wrote the word coach with lowercase letters, as if making it smaller could undo its authority. I tried one honest question that night. "Who's your favorite client?" I asked while she folded towels in that precise way she likes, edges aligned as if kindness is geometry. "Hard to say," she said. "There's this one guy who never quits, though. I respect that." She looked at me and smiled, and I realized how many smiles in a life are reruns. "You like people who don't quit," I said. "I like people who know when to," she answered and put the last towel on the stack like a period. I called a lawyer not because I was ready to leave, but because I wanted to know what leaving would require. For once in my life, I wanted the administrative shape of pain. The lawyer's office smelled like coffee and someone else's raincoat. She asked me if I wanted to catch Lena in a story I could prove. "You can't bring a metaphor to court," she said. "You need a timestamp." She gave me a list that felt like a dare. Save messages. Photograph what you can. Don't threaten. Breathe. I asked what breathing had to do with it. "Everything," she said. "People who forget to breathe write bad emails." I did confront Lena in the mirror room. I didn't smash the silicone bracelet under my heel. I planned dinner. I told her I wanted to host the neighbor couple from 12C because we'd promised and never did. She said yes and then forgot to mark it on her calendar. On Thursday she told me she had to help close out a program. I said, "We have guests at 8, and watched the way her eyes flickered toward the idea of being two places at once. "I'll be up by 8:15, she said. I promise. Promises, I'm learning, are sometimes luxury items people touch without buying. Our neighbors came. They brought wine that tasted like apples that don't apologize. We ate early. At 8:10, laughter was a coat we kept putting on. At 8:21, the elevator clanked on our floor with that sound we all pretend isn't sad. At 8:29, Lena walked in, hair wet, cheeks pink like the cold had chased her all the way. She kissed me in front of them as if kisses were legally binding, and I flinched at my own hunger. "Sorry," she said, shrugging out of a hoodie that wasn't hers. A gray hoodie with a logo, the gym's name, and underneath, in small font, the word grit. She put it on the back of a chair and sat, and the citrus metal smell climbed out of the fabric like a secret that couldn't sit still. After dessert, When the neighbors told a story that had no room for us in it, I stood and fetched the silicone bracelet from the windowsill and set it beside the hoodie. Lost and found, I said lightly. Lena's eyes went to the bracelet and then to me. The look in them was not guilt and not innocence but math. What equals what if you divide the evening by the truth? Found on the stairs, she said. People drop things. Her mouth made a small shape that could have been an apology in a different language. When the door closed behind our guests, I didn't pretend to tidy. I sat, she stood. The hoodie slouched over the chair like a lazy accomplice. "Do you love him?" I asked, and surprised us both by not shouting the question. It came out like I was asking if she preferred tea to coffee. She exhaled like a runner who realizes the hill keeps going. "I love how he makes me feel during a very specific 60 minutes of my life," she said. "Does that count?" "It counts," I said, "if you make it count." I hadn't planned the sentence. It sounded like something a better man would say, and I didn't trust it, but it was true. She told me there been a month of accidents that had decided to be a pattern, a text thread that had started with macros and became metaphors, the thrill of a keycard that didn't belong to her, the way mirrors forgive you by repeating you. She said she was sorry in 3 different ways, for wanting, for taking, for believing we could pretend. She cried once, silently, one neat tear like a proof. I didn't touch her. Not because I wanted to punish her, but because I wanted to find out if my hands belonged to me. I moved through the sequence the lawyer had given me. Photographs of what could be photographed, an email to myself with times and dates, a shared account frozen without drama. In the morning I told Lena I wanted a separation and heard how the word placed a soft wall between us, not a prison, not a gate, but a wall with my name on my side. She nodded and asked if we could take turns with the apartment until the lease ended. "The pool helps me think," she said. "The balcony does that for me," I answered. It felt like dividing weather. He wrote to me once, not from a personal address. People like him send themselves ahead through corporate portals. It was a careful note that suggested grown-up conversation. Words like boundaries and regret scavenged the sentences for pity. I didn't answer him. I forwarded the email to the folder and went downstairs to swim. The water closed over my head with the indifference of an old god. I pushed off the wall and passed through the place where the after-hours smell had lived, and it was gone. Just the chlorine, clean and dumb. On her last night before she moved to a sublet, Lena stood on the balcony and shivered in my hoodie. "I don't know who I am without this window," she said, meaning the view. I thought about telling her she could be someone who didn't need a window to see herself, but that sounded cruel even in my head. "You'll find another," I said, "or I will. We're not the last of anything." She leaned her shoulder against mine like a truce. "If I asked you to try," she said, "what would you say?" "That we'd be trying to return to an address we've already moved out of," I said, "and I hate backtracking." She laughed a little at that reel, and then did the kindest thing she could have done. She didn't ask again. I slept alone the next week and felt the bed recalibrate. Sheets learn the contours of absence faster than they learn new bodies. I made coffee and let the mug heat my hands. In the mornings, the pool below looked like a promise someone else would keep. I ironed pillowcases badly. The creases looked like folded maps. On a whim, I took the silicone bracelet and set it on the gym's lost and found shelf at the front desk without a note. The receptionist glanced at me with the professional sadness of people who see too much and say nothing. "Someone will be glad to get that back," she said. "Someone always is," I answered. Sometimes I take the long way up the stairs so I can look into the dance studio through the glass. The mirror holds every version of whoever is in front of it. Some nights it's dark, and I see only myself, the city behind me like a second self. Some nights there's a class, and I watch people learn to move at the same time without crashing. I never saw Lena and him there again. Maybe they learned that even forgiving mirrors learn to tell the truth eventually. On the day the lease ran out, I rolled the last box to the elevator and pressed the button with the same finger I used to draw circles on Lena's back when she couldn't sleep. The doors opened on a smell that was only metal and dust. I liked the austerity of it. At the curb, I looked up at the balcony that had made winter bearable and felt the gentle ache of something that had ended at the right size. I touched my chest where her hand used to rest at night and found only skin, warmed by my own palm. It was enough. I turned toward the river. The off-season light made the water look honest. I walked until the wind wrote my name on my throat and I recognized it.